Alrighty, alrighty. Um, so I might have to edit this out. I don't know. Um, I'm not really good at editing. Welcome back to another LoQual review. Today we're going to be talking about hoppers. This is the first time I have a script here. I wanted to write out my thoughts. So it's a little bit of a higher quality LoQual review. However, this might feel a lot like me reading because I am, and I hope later this will kind of sound more natural, like I'm able to actually say what I want to say in a more natural way while having it still be scripted thoughts. Um, so forgive me as I look at my script and you see me look at my script and read my script. um, uh, I might want to. Oh, also, welcome to the Reverie Review. Reverie Review. Uh, new name. Hope you like it. Jesus, voice cracks. Yeah. So without further ado, let's get into what I think about hoppers. Um, it's it's really good. I knew very little other than what the advertisement said about it being Avatar, but with a robot beaver, and the absolutely frantic concept art that they released a while back. Hopefully, I can put that somewhere there. Um, I did not know Pixar could release another banger original movie like this. Uh, I am someone that tries to at least give some of these newer movies a chance, but have not been super invested in the new original movies they've released. Onward was extremely forgettable, and while that may be due to when it came out, which was like early March of 2020, by the way, I want to say March 9th when I looked it up, which is crazy. Crazy time to release. Uh, its story was nothing too memorable either. I watched Luca and thought it was cute, but not much more than that. And I think Turning Red is either overrated or overhated, depending on who I'm talking to. Um, for me, it was just fine. And while I liked Soul, I was hoping it would feel more like Ratatouille in terms of like its aesthetic, but it felt more like existential Inside Out, which I do like Inside Out, but kind of just felt like that. And it also walked the line of like Princess and the Frog's issue of having a person of color as your main character and relegating them to a different like body or like form for most of the runtime. Uh, and now, from my memory, Soul did actually have a good amount of time with Joe in his regular body, but it's been a while, so forgive me if I'm wrong about that. I missed out on Elemental and Elio for similar reasons. Um, they both did not really catch my eye. I almost watched Elio on vacation, but never really found the right time or mood. And yeah, I heard both were fine and not anything crazy. Um, yeah, especially compared to like Pixar's older movies. For me, the last really good original Pixar movie was probably Coco, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I think a lot of other people really, really like Coco, and there hasn't been like a new thing that stuck out to them unless they are like Luca or Turning Red fans. Um, as far as sequels and spin-offs, um, I guess since Coco, it starts with Incredibles 2, which was a major letdown. Toy Story 4 was gorgeously animated and confusing in its existence, but provided some nice closure for Woody. And and trust me, I will have a lot to say about Toy Story 5 at a later date. I'll probably talk a lot about Pixar later. I want to do like a sort of watch all of the movies and talk about them, but that'll be a later thing. Um, I did not watch Lightyear because it just simply did not look good. Besides, like the like lighting and like animation. Like I remember watching the trailer and being like, whoa. But story wise, it didn't really speak to me. Inside Out 2 was really good and made me sob. Um, so I would say Inside Out 2 was the most recent Pixar movie period that I really, really enjoyed. Excuse me, sorry. In case you don't know, I burp a lot. Okay, so Hoppers came out, and I gotta say, it was insanely good. It was incredibly funny, and for a children's movie, and I do hate saying that term, by the way, I prefer family movies. It was kind of dark compared to a lot of other contemporary Disney and Pixar animated movies. I could not predict where the story was going and how batshit crazy it would go. It also had a lot of heart and soul and love put into this movie. You can tell there was a unique vision throughout, and that tone is kept through. Like, seriously, so many people in the theater were dying laughing, myself included. I saw a couple people compare this to like a good DreamWorks movie, but honestly, its freshness reminded me of whenever Sony Pictures came out with like a banger. I'm not saying Hoppers is on the level of Spider-Verse or Mitchell's versus the Machines, but more so in terms of having a unique style that clicked with me and was a surprisingly good movie from a company that has been meddling with the mediocre for close to a decade now. I would honestly, this is off script, I would honestly compare this movie more to Mitchell's versus the Machines. I feel like Mitchell's versus the Machines is a lot more stronger in its like tone and aesthetic than Hopper's is, but that's because like the tone and aesthetic that Hopper's is going for is different than Mitchell's versus the Machines, right? But in terms of like levels of absurdity, I feel like they both kind of have that same level. Mitchell's versus the Machines was absolutely crazy. That Furby segment, dying laughing. Okay. What else? This movie, yes, yeah. This movie might have my favorite Pixar protagonist in a really long time. Mabel is funny, endearing, cute, and incredibly passionate, and is not afraid to get really and justifiably angry. That woman is a fighter, okay? Her character design is incredible and stands out a lot to me. The animation is also really good, and the character design doesn't feel like Luca turning red Elio reheated nachos at all. It was very distinct from those, which I know is a lot of people's complaints about recent Pixar movies. And I don't know, that's a point that I would probably want to talk about in a later Pixar video. I particularly loved how the animals are animated. As far as like texture, they look really soft. They almost look like plush like stuffed animals. And when humans look at them, they have like button eyes, like those little like round button eyes that you would see on a stuffed animal. But then when like we the audience are seeing it from like the beavers perspective, when we are like seeing it from the animals perspectives, they have more expressive eyes, and they actually use that for really good like comedic moments in the movie. There's a lot of really funny moments by just having like the black button eyes. It's awesome. So now I am going to talk about spoilers. I probably went through that really, really fast. So I'm sorry if you couldn't keep up. And I'm sorry if I'm going to talk about spoilers for the majority of this movie. But there was a lot that I wanted to talk about in terms of like if I bring up any like jokes that I thought were really funny. So as well as like the general story, I feel like the less you know about this movie other than Avatar with beavers, the better it is. This movie caught me so off guard with its themes and messages. Because because I really didn't know what it was about. Um, as well as just it being so unpredictable, letting the movie surprise you is phenomenal. I trust me, you will not know where the movie is going next. It was phenomenal. Okay, so I'm going to talk about spoilers. So either pause this video now and go see it, or skip to this timestamp, and we'll see if I actually include the timestamp either there or there, so I don't look like an idiot. Whoa, look at that. Okay, spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Holy shit, Titus was so fucking funny. The score when they take Mabel to the council was really cute. And then when we meet the council, it switches to like full on like God of War Halo kind of music. So funny. And this movie also did not have a Princess and the Frog situation. That was one of my biggest worries, and for some reason is a trend with a lot of movies where we have a person of color, like I said before, a person of color relegated to a different form for most of the movie. This movie did not have that. We got a lot of time spent with Mabel and understanding who she is as a person before she hops into the beaver. I also thought it was an incredible choice to have her outside of the beaver body for the rest of the movie after she leaves. Like, once she leaves the beaver body, she does not go back in for the rest of the movie. And, like, the entire third act, she's in her own body, and the mayor, Mayor Jerry, is in the beaver. I thought that was an incredible choice to make. Sorry, I'm losing where I am. It's the problem when you go off script and then go back to your script. Like for the entire third act, she's in her own body, and Mayor Jerry is in the beaver. I thought that was an incredible choice to make and a show of restraint that they felt confident enough in the character to have her exist outside of the beaver. And having Beaver Jerry wear the tie was phenomenal. And then I added a little thing here later. Also, thinking about it even more, it double makes sense to have Jerry as the beaver because Titus is disguised as the mayor, which allowed for a lot more jokes from the crowd than if there were two Jerrys on stage. If you have not seen the movie and you don't know what that means, as Titus is disguised as the mayor, I'm so sorry. You are missing out. You should watch this movie. It is crazy. It is fucking insane to kill animals that were introduced to the audience by name and has speaking lines and the like animated eyes and all that. Especially Meryl Streep's character when the audience when Mabel squishes her. The audience in the theater went crazy, and then sliding her hands across the wall. Oh my God, that's gore. That's gore of my Meryl Streep comfort character. I am surprised that Disney let that fly. And I would say like and there was like another instance of like a fish where we get introduced to the fish by name and then gets murdered. It just gets fully eaten. And I am surprised Disney let that fly. In those moments, it definitely felt like Shrek when Fiona kills all those animals, and so I can understand why people say it felt like a DreamWorks movie in those moments. It also was crazy to have the face of robot Mayor Jerry ripped off and then played with. I again, crazy. So another thing that I loved about this movie was its messaging. I think they definitely pulled their punches in some aspects, like Mabel not wanting to squish the mayor, but I understand at the end of the day, it's a Disney movie. And asking for an incredibly radical idea like killing a politician is probably not something they would want to tell kids to do. Excuse me. They still had an irredeemable villain in Titus that gets killed anyways. So I think we still got to win. But Mabel felt so incredibly real in a time where a lot of activists, but especially environmental activists, are shouting at the top of our lungs saying, hey, please listen. This will affect us all, and depending on the issue, kill us all, including you. And constantly having people not listen to that is really frustrating and explains why Mabel is constantly angry. And I love that. And towards the end, when this like incredibly fiery personality feels defeated and useless because these people will stop at nothing to get what they want until it's too late, hurts so much to see and cut really deep. I loved that she kept wanting to help put out what fire she could, because she cares that deeply about this world. There are so many little moments that just show how compassionate and kind Mabel is, including the post-credit scene where she actually does get the old man his groceries. She is constantly risking her life for this world because without it, we die anyways. She jumps on early on in the movie. She jumps onto the dam that's full of dynamite. I, I feel as though it is especially heartbreaking and poignant to have a movie like WALL-E come out almost 2 whole decades ago, and yet Pixar has to release another movie about how constant expansion and corporate/political greed is one of the many things killing our planet. Yeah, this movie hurt a lot, but at the same time was very satisfying. And art is... I've heard that art is always an escape, and this movie feels very real while also feeling like an escape, which I think is what good movies should do. I feel like they should be able to really cut you deep with its messaging, and then the escapism is that everything turns out okay. So that was spoiler sections. So I'll kind of go back now. All in all, I think this movie was phenomenal. I think Piper Curda, who was the voice of Mabel, the writers and director sell this character incredibly well. The whole movie depends on you thinking Mabel is likable. And it's not only is she likable, she's inspirational. She is an incredibly caring individual. And like I said, might be my favorite Pixar protagonist. And not just like a recent one, but probably ever. I'll have to see how I feel about that if I rewatch a lot of Pixar movies or all of them. But we'll see. I think the movie does an incredible job having you care about her. The humor was amazing and felt very refreshing for a Pixar/Disney movie. The animation is amazing. If I had to nitpick, I would say this movie didn't need some of the licensed music. But there were only 4 songs, and one of them was written for this movie, so it wasn't the worst. It never felt distracting, and the songs that they did choose were not like obnoxiously overpicked songs either. So I'm fine with it. That's always subject to change. Those songs could, at any point, whenever you rewatch the movie, become incredibly overused songs. So who's to say? But as for right now, I feel like the song choices were fine. And again, there's only 4 of them, which is, I'll take it. I am interested to see how this movie will hold up on rewatches because a lot of the humor came from me not expecting how absurd things would get. Kind of like how, in my opinion, the Deadpool movies only really work when you forget what the jokes were in those movies. Like, it's like every couple years you can kind of watch it because you kind of forget what happens. Um, I'm sure Hoppers probably holds up a lot better than those films, but I'm interested to see how it will. Um, uh, it also helps that I saw this movie uh, in theaters and with someone who, I kid you not, had a very similar childhood experience as Mabel. They were raised primarily from a grandparent that instilled very early on a deep love for all living creatures. So this movie hit very deep for me. I think Pete Docter is probably going to ensure more movies like this don't get made because I can tell this movie came from a passion with a faith in its absurdist tone instead of a broad stroke appeal with sequels and spin-offs like he wants to do. So if someone at Pixar is somehow watching this, more movies like this, please. Have faith in your creators and animators to make something truly awesome. While I may not be the biggest fan of Luca and Turning Red, those movies have a cult following because there are themes and tones that speak very deeply for those people. And that's what Pixar should be doing. Exploring deep themes with gorgeous visuals. Art will always and should always be a risk. Yeah. So to give Hoppers a score, I would personally give it a 9.5, but maybe more realistically an 8 out of 10 for most people. I can maybe give it, I don't know if I want to do like 0.5s or anything like that. So we'll just say 9. But more realistically, an 8 out of 10 for most people. For me, it just checked a lot of the right boxes. So please go see this movie in theaters if you can. I guess like I'll move to like sort of the outro kind of part now. It's like an outro. I don't have this scripted. Whoa. So I got to figure out what I want to do for how I rate things. I think I like what Shea Frillis and Cosmonaut do with the number system. I would do 1 out of 10. 5 is a average to good movie. Okay, we're not doing this like stupid grade, like American grade system where like a 7 out of 10 is an okay movie. No, a 7 out of 10 movie is a good movie. All right, I'm making that clear right now. All right, 5 out of 10, that's a decent movie. All right, it's a fine movie. I don't want to do like decimals, maybe. If I were to do decimals, probably just keep it with 0.5 because at that point, just have like a percent score, which is different. That is different than how Rotten Tomatoes does percent scores. Okay, that is based off of how many people liked it versus didn't like it. Okay, it's not the average ranking. It's just if people did or didn't like it. Mine would be a ranking. So yeah, I think that's sort of how I feel about it. Maybe that's subject to change as I sort of figure out where I want to take this channel. So anyways, have a good day. Love one another and punch the people that don't. Thank you.